Welcome back to Sunday Nation. We're speaking with former state rep, Plymouth Township Supervisor Heise, talking to us here about water infrastructure issues, of course, emanating from the Highland Park water debt crisis. So the question, though, is the state going to put water infrastructure on the table? And because we have not seen that in this Highland Park situation, and I feel Highland Park gives them an opportunity here to zero in and address water infrastructure across the entire state.
Absolutely.
You know, billions of dollars of surplus money that the Democrats are sitting on in Lansing. I mean, what else could you ask for?
I think that is one of the key areas where that federal money, all that money that the state is sitting on, that kind of thing should be going to water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, which is a totally different problem, stormwater management, and public safety. I know in my community, I'm using my federal money to buy a new ambulance, okay, because that to me is where that money was intended to go.
I mean, Highland Park doesn't even have a real police station.
Right.
Former police chief Hilton and Napoleon was on this program the week before the mayor, and he said it, and my jaw almost dropped.
Yeah. Well, and it's, you know, I don't know if public safety in that kind of a brick and mortar sense is really where the state wants to go, but clearly we have water infrastructure issues throughout the state.
Yes.
It's more than Flint, it's more than Benton Harbor, it's in Detroit, it's in Inkster, it's downriver communities. I was the director of the Wayne County Department of Environment under Bob Ficano for 6.5 years. I mean, we spent billions of dollars just in southeast Michigan on sewage control and stopping pollution in the Rouge River and downriver and other facilities. So water and sewer infrastructure has always been a huge issue, and this would be an opportune time, since we're getting this, frankly, free money from the federal government. Let's direct that where it's really needed most.
So here's my concern, my worries, that we wake up one day and we are told that Highland Park's water is no longer drinkable. Yeah. Because they found lead in it, just like what happened in Benton Harbor. Yeah. And then the state starts moving helter-skelter, start running, trying to put out the fire when the entire house is already on fire.
Right, and you know, we are seeing that scenario possibly unfold by doing nothing now, or by just saying we'll worry about this later, or let GLWA and Highland Park, you know, sort it out. That's not the time we should not be waiting for that scenario that you've put out. Right. Let's use this opportunity right now. I hate the term, don't let a crisis go to waste, okay? And I don't think we're at a crisis point yet. I think we're just at an inflection point where the communities like me, the state, GLWA, Highland Park, this is a time for us to solve the problem and stop fighting in court and stop pointing fingers.
Yeah. No, well, and I understand that. And here's the issue too, because, you know, over the years we've been told, you know, cities are creatures of the state. I'm sure you've heard of that terminology. Yeah. So cities cannot be divorced of the state. I mean, you can declare, suddenly every city has the right to self-determination, has its own charter and so forth, every township has, but you know, at the end of the day, they're still a part of the state. Yeah. So what is stopping the state from saying, we're going to come into Highland Park and do the right thing here, and we're not going to leave the problem of this infrastructure, all of this stuff, for Highland Park to go back and forth in a tug of war with the Great Lakes Water Authority. We are the state, we're sitting on money, and we're going to come in and take charge and help solve this problem, so we don't have to deal with another Benton Harbor or another Flint crisis.
Yeah, it's the perfect opportunity to do that, and the time is now, and that's what they should do. Now, again, we get into the politics of it, because I don't know how far you want the state to go. When my colleagues and I were in Lansing with Governor Snyder, we got beat up every day about the emergency management law.
I'm very wary
so, I mean,
of...
we got to be careful how we do that.
Yeah, I'm very wary of state intervention. I mean, that's something that I'm just opposed to, but state takeover. Sorry, state takeover. But what we're saying here is the state doing the right thing. If you help Highland Park, you're helping the entire state. If you help Benton Harbor, if you help Plymouth Township, you know, you're doing that. I mean, that's what the state ought to do, and it's in a position where it is not crying broke. Right. But in this case, the state is backing away. Or that doesn't show any kind of real movement. I'll tell you this, if Highland Park, if we wake up tomorrow and find out that Highland Park's water has lead, I'll tell you this, Governor Whitmer will be on CNN every day trying to explain herself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough position to be in. I saw that with Snyder. So,
yes, exactly.
You know, and she's got the opportunity to attack this now and stop that kind of a nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
But again, the opportunity is now. We should take it. The money's there. And again, I'm a lawyer too. I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And you know, you got to go back to the legislative intent. What was the intent behind all that federal money? Public health, safety, infrastructure. And those, we got to get back to the basics on that. Not some of these pork projects and giveaways that you've outlined in many of your columns.
Right.
And you know, getting back to the idea of what role the state should play. Look, I know that we're not going to go back to emergency managers anytime soon, and I don't want to rehash that. But if we're talking really here about a global settlement between GLWA, the communities, Highland Park. Don't forget, I want to get reimbursed too. I lost $185,000 they took from me, and I didn't get back. Dearborn's 3.6. You know, I mean, they're in
and
trouble.
Detroit is 1 point something.
Detroit is 1 point something. So you know, we all would like to get reimbursed here at some point. And this is the kind of, you know, call it a grand bargain or whatever. But we do have, Judge Rosen is still working on this case. He was assigned to be a mediator, between Highland Park and GLWA by the Wayne County Circuit Court. I don't know what the status of that is. We tried to intervene in that, and we were politely told no. But this would be a great time for some kind of an overseer, somebody, whether that's a retired judge or a retired politician.
I remember when Judge Vikings in federal court was overseeing the water department. And ensuring that certain things were being done. And for a long time, Judge Vikings actually presided over the Detroit Water and Sewage Department.
I was there. We were hauled into court like every month there for a while. And Judge Vikings famously said, if it comes out of a tap, I'm going to regulate it and I'm going to control it. And he did a pretty good job with that. I'm not saying we need that level of oversight, but we got to have somebody who's going to hold all of us accountable, okay? Hold the state accountable, keep your promises, fix the system, help out Highland Park financially to make that happen. Highland Park's got to end the litigation. They've got to be a full member of GLWA. They've got to, they got to abandon their own water system. It's not going to happen.
Highland Park would want something in return for them to abandon the litigation. It has to be something that shows that the state is willing to really come in and address this issue. And we've not seen that. And I think to your earlier point, though, what even makes this more almost insulting, I'm going back to the Fay Bay doing $20 million for the nonprofit. I mean, to be honest, it's really insulting. I mean, that should not be the headline news coming out of Lansing. It should be a massive package on water infrastructure. It should be a massive package to help revitalize urban Michigan. It should be a massive package to help revitalize these communities across the state of Michigan that have for a long time been struggling. You know, and it should not be, headline news should not be $20 million for a nonprofit that was not even set up yet, that we don't even know what the real goal here is. I mean, that is really a misguided priority.
Or take that money and put it into a revolving loan program. You know, so that guys like I can tap into it as well. You know, the Highland Park thing is always going to be called a bailout, whether we like it or not. But you still have the vast majority of communities in Michigan. If you gave us a low-interest loan to do, which they do, by the way, but if you put more money into that fund and create a stronger, bigger, low-interest loan fund, that would allow a lot of the other inner-ring suburb-type communities, like Dearborn, like Southfield, to be able to make a lot of these fixes on their own without a crisis happening, to avert that kind of problem. And it takes a leadership and vision.
I want to talk about also just quickly before we round up what I consider the unfinished business of Great Lakes Water Authority, because we're dealing with the Highland Park situation, but are there other issues that you're uneasy about relating to the Great Lakes Water Authority? Because I think this is an opportunity also to put them on the spotlight here, because they are an important factor in this entire debate.
Well, I was not a fan of the Great Lakes Water Authority when it was first created, and I still think that there's a lot of issues that should still be addressed. I don't think it's as transparent as it should be. The fact that we got hit with $24 million in assessments without our knowledge or consent, the communities, that's a total breakdown in transparency and accountability. I know that there's an appointed board. My original vision for GLWA was to have it basically on the SEMCOG, the
Southeast
SEMCOG
Michigan,
model.
yeah.
With all the communities represented at the table. It's been done before. It sounds tough, but it's really easy, fairly easy to manage. I think at a minimum right now, GLWA should have a annual stakeholders meeting where they invite the mayors, supervisors, city managers, invite us to a large venue. I'll take a day off. We can all go up there and we can learn from them. Here's where all the money's going. Here's what we're spending it on. Here's where the money is not going. Here's where the assessments are not going. And give us as elected officials, the decision makers, give us a better idea of what's happening. Now, in fairness to them, they do small group meetings all the time.
Right.
But those are the technical people. Those are the financial people. That stuff is, frankly, a lot of that's above my head. And so we've got to be able to bring it down to the local level so that mayors and supervisors, regular folks like us, can understand these issues, so that we're not blindsided by a $24 million assessment. That's the kind of thing that we need to prevent in the future.
They have not been able, or have they been able to explain to you about the 24 and 50-something million dollars in total?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of water and sewer debts, but the problem is they've passed the,
but even Highland Park disputes Great Lakes Water Authority's metric for coming up with these fees.
Yeah, no, and believe me, those kinds of disputes over the formulas happen all the time. We dispute the formulas. Right. Everybody does. So that's kind of, it doesn't make it right, but it's always like a fight between my data versus your data. And I know in Highland Park, though, they can back up a lot of their concerns with the failure in infrastructure that they have. It's harder for me to do that because I have a newer system.
Right.
But I think what we should do is, by understanding the rates and the formulas, and they do explain that, but they got to explain it to the rest of us, really, so that we understand.
Yeah.
And we have to improve those lines of communication so that if there are problems in the future, like we've had with Highland Park, let us know about that. Let us know early on so that we can go to the state or somebody else and try to solve it before it becomes a problem.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here.
All right.
We'll have to keep watch and see whether the state is going to finally wake up and smell the coffee and do something.
Yeah.
Because I get a sense that they'll wait until something catastrophic happens in Highland Park. Then they put the PR machine out, and then the governor is out there explaining herself, and these leaders from Lansing are out there trying to explain themselves with a bunch of PR.
I agree with you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you.
Court Heise, for Plymouth Township Supervisor, former state rep, talking to us here on Sunday Nation about the crisis in Highland Park and the larger issue of water infrastructure. We'll be right back with more on Sunday Nation.